Globally, obesity affects more than 220 million children between the ages of 5 and 18. In South Africa, 1 in 5 children under the age of 13 is overweight or obese. That's double the global average. The Global Food Research Program tells us that excess weight during childhood is likely to persist into adulthood. This increases the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, heart diseases, and cancer at a younger age. Young people are also hungry, which has devastating consequences and leads to poor learning outcomes. Our children here in South Africa consume an average of 50 grams of sugar per day. That's around 10 teaspoons, more than double the maximum amount of free sugars recommended by the World Health Organization. Then there's ultra-processed products like cereal that tells us it's healthy but has high amounts of sugar. But it's enticing to eat colorful, sugary cereal. And who tells us this, that it's cool and healthy? The way the box looks and big food companies. This special youth show is about amplifying the voices of young people across South Africa, from Limpopo to the Eastern Cape to KwaZulu-Natal to the Western Cape and Gauteng. So today I'm here with a group of young people. Welcome and hello.
Hello.
We'll talk about how you navigate the challenging food system and whether or not big food is feeding you lies. So my favorite food when I grew up was Millie Meal, some sugar, milk and butter. Yours, Simpiwe?
Mine was 2-minute noodles, get home right after school, build a kettle, pour it in, and I'm done.
Joseph?
Mine used to be pap and amasi and a whole lot of sugar.
Alizwa, as a dietitian, are you surprised that we like pap, sugar, and 2-minute noodles, as Simpiwe said? And does this ultimately lead to poor nutrition?
I am definitely not surprised because we are influenced from a very young age. So I think as a dietitian, I believe it is very important that we are able to distinguish from nutritious whole foods and ultra-processed products. It's not even food, if you want to call it. Because as it comes up from your memories, ultra-processed products are not a true reflection of their natural form. So now it is the unhealthy, it's added sugar, added salt, added unhealthy fats. We lose all the vitamins and the minerals and the nutrition that we require. So it does then lead to poor nutrition because the consumption of this is constantly increasing. Also with age, it doesn't change. Yeah.
Joseph, you and your family lost everything during the xenophobic violence in Johannesburg. You were forced to go live in an informal settlement where you and your family simply had no choice but to eat all the wrong stuff that Alizwa is talking about. Talk to us about this.
Yes, so unfortunately we did lose everything. And due to that, we were forced to eat ultra-processed foods. And at that time, we ourselves were not aware of the food that we were ingesting because we did not have the knowledge to differentiate between your nutritious food or your ultra-processed food. Because at that point, it's either you have the choice to purchase ultra-processed food, which is easily accessible, or your nutritious food, which was very expensive. And suffering a loss like that, you simply did not have a choice but to purchase the ultra-processed food.
Winnie, Joseph talks about no choices. You work in Limpopo with young people and with old people, and you finding that we're getting more cases of obesity, type 2 diabetes. Tell us about what you found dealing with different patients in Limpopo.
Okay. As I do nutrition counseling to our patients and looking through their diet history, their daily dietary intake, I can conclude that they really depend on what is available. But at the same time, it is also the issue of not knowing how to navigate the packages. I've seen a lot of people who don't know how to navigate whether the food product has high salt, whether a product has high sugar, whether the product is high in unhealthy fats, as you have mentioned, like saturated fats and trans fat. It's all because of not having enough knowledge. And this is a huge problem because we end up having young people with non-communicable diseases like hypertension, like diabetes, which are conditions that are most common in elderly people. But now we are having them in our young people. Therefore, it's a huge block to break as dietitians because it's also shaped by how they grew up. They consume a lot of unhealthy food from a very young age, and as they grow up with that habit. This is because of their surrounding and lack of information about the shortcomings of this consumption of unhealthy food.
Joan, you've heard from the dietitians. You also heard Joseph's very sad story. As a journalist and a researcher, you have a front row seat into kind of the tactics, and you often refer to big food having the same tactics as big oil. Talk to us about what you found and how uncanny some of these things are.
Yeah, big oil and big tobacco, these big corporates, they really haven't changed their tactics at all. Some of the kind of big hits are delaying new regulations that the government might want to put on their business. They might deflect and make it seem that it's actually the individual who's the problem and not their products. And then one that the tobacco industry is very famous for doing is cast a little bit of doubt over the body of scientific research that's coming out that actually proves to us that their products are unhealthy, but they just want to cast some doubt on that. And of course, all this misinformation is so easy to amplify on social media as well.
As a young person, one thing that I've found, and I've lived in different areas of South Africa, from rural areas to townships, and when I'm at the more luxurious parts of South Africa, it's a lot easier to access healthier foods, but when you're in your townships or your rural areas, your healthy foods, they aren't found where you can access them easily. The foods that are around you aren't sustainable, they aren't affordable healthy foods, and they aren't widely accessible healthy foods either. And I think that's a huge issue that needs to be tackled by governments as well.
So we're going to continue this conversation, but we recently went to Salt River Senior Secondary and we had some interesting insights from those pupils. Let's have a look.
When COVID hit the school, a number of families lost their employment, and with the unemployment came poverty, and with poverty came a lack of nutrition. We had children who physically fainted in front of the office door. And then we realized, being a poor school in a poor community, we need to enable the children to be self-sufficient, not necessarily to be subsistence farmers, but so that they could learn the tricks of the trade, of how to do things on their own, and to equip them with skills that they could take into their adult lives and into their own communities.
Umsebenzi wami apha egadini kuplanta, faka amanzi kwiplanti, then ndikline igadi.
Ek is maar net hier om te leer van planten, hoe om te planten. Wat kan een mens doen? Wat kan een mens samen met de mensen leven maken? Ons het havens. Ik heb de spinazie huis toegenomen en ik heb leed is huis toegenomen.
So there's a quote by a guy called Gangster Gardner, and he says, the school should not have a garden, but the school should be in a garden.
Once a week, my caretakers or two parents from the community will go in there, pick the various vegetables that they have there, and we cook a pot of soup. The children are learning about nutrition and the health benefits thereof. They've also started growing their own in plastic bottles, which they're actually going to take home and start spreading it into their communities. The positive impact is in the pass rate of our learners.
Simpiwe, I couldn't help but notice you were nodding and very impressed. But you also say that whoever controls the mind controls the media. Talk to us about your reaction to the insert. And do you think it's possible for even your cousins in Limpopo?
As a young policymaker myself, I was very impressed, having been part of the South African Youth Climate Action Plan and South African Youth Gender Action Plan. We really try to push for research and implementation to meet together, and seeing those peoples harvesting their own foods and their own gardens is something that needs to be all over the media. The quote that you mentioned from Jim Morrison, that those who control the media control the mind, essentially just saying that big food companies are flooding us with these impressive ideas of what processed food should look like, and that it's apparently nutritious and that it's healthy, and they're putting a spotlight on all these things which aren't true. And we have people like my cousin from rural areas like Limpopo, where they see these things and it's a glamorized things, and then they become lured into the, quote, luxury of these processed foods and what they're supposed to gain from having these processed foods. They'll live a bigger and better life because they have these processed foods, not understanding that it really does nothing for them. And like the teacher from Salt River High says, at the moment that they start eating nutritious food, their brain changes and they start becoming healthy and they start thinking better. Whereas the processed foods, they tell us that that's what they're supposed to do, but that's not at all what happens.
Lisa, as a researcher at the University of the Western Cape, you actually analysed 4,000 social media posts. And clearly you heard what Simpiwe said. It's glamorized, it's cool. What did your research find?
Yes, so as you mentioned, I looked at more than 4,000 posts. Just under half of that contained food and beverages. And all of these posts were by social media influencers. And when I done a nutrient analysis on the products that were in these posts, I found that most of them, more than 70% of them actually, contained high amounts of sugar and salt and saturated fats. And if you consider the fact that most of the posts were also contained marketing, it's concerning, you know? And only 1% of those posts were actually labeled as containing marketing. So marketing isn't easy to spot on social media. And so it is glamorized. The posts contain techniques where it's basically infiltrated into the post. You don't even notice the product there, but the branding is there, the product is there, it's being consumed by the influencer. And so that's all different types of techniques that they use to market the products to children.
Alizwe, you were fighting there for my space. What do you want to talk to me?
Just to add on to what they just said, if ever we'd have this ethical marketing on social media, seeing that there's gardens that can be made in water plastic bottles, then it would promote a more nutritious lifestyle to people, because it is what we recommend to patients when we're actually counseling, that you can actually collect bottles and plant your own foods that will be natural occurring and that will be nutritious for them. So if ever this then is shown across to people, they wouldn't be so surprised when we recommend this to them, that it's this easy to actually grow your own, and it is more affordable in that sense, yes.
Your fellow dietitian, Winnie?
Yes, for example, we have social media influence. The very same way that these companies are using social media to provide this information, we can also use the social media to convey information such as the one in Salt River, which will be very helpful in breaking the ice that I was talking about of having a strict loyalty towards consumption of unhealthy food. And it will help us as dietitians, because we are promoting something that they are familiar with, which will be very easy to adhere and to accommodate that as well.
Joseph, I see you were trying to get our attention, but talk to us about the importance of community gardens for the students that you are working with, and you also want government to assist you.
We are trying to get the attention of the government as well as the society around us in order to support us within this project of community gardening. Because as a UNICEF volunteer and ambassador, we have partnered up with several NGOs where we go and volunteer to help out with the children and everything. And most of the NGOs actually have community gardens, but all of these community gardens are not active except for a few. So once we actually get the government and people around us to join in this particular initiative, we'll be able to pass the message that once you're able to grow your own nutritious food that is accessible to you and at a very low rate, it'll allow people to grow in the culture of eating healthy food. So once we get the help of the government, they will be pushing a very good agenda as to allowing people to grow in a culture of eating healthy, and secondly, increasing their life expectancy.
Joan, you were listening very intently to Joseph. As a journalist, do you think that's possible?
I think we'll need a number of changes to our policies to achieve something like that. We would start with proper labeling so that people can be empowered to make good choices about what they're taking off the shelves. But we'd also need the government to help to build a food environment that's healthy to navigate. As they mentioned, that it's so much easier to find a fast food outlet, especially in our poorer neighborhoods, than fruit and veg. And lastly, I think another important thing is for policymakers and our elected leaders to be more transparent about their dealings with the food industry, so that journalists and activists can make sure that the policies that are being written are for the benefit of the community and not for corporations.
Food companies invest millions into advertising campaigns to make their products appealing to our kids. Every second, children in our country are exposed to the advertising and marketing of unhealthy breakfast cereal, snacks and drinks. It's enticing, colourful and attractive. It's no surprise then that television, radio advertising and social media marketing are powerful mediums for marketing food and beverages. Numerous studies have shown that food marketing does influence food preferences and consumption. We travelled to KwaZulu-Natal and we met a very interesting chicken farmer. Let's have a look.
Ngizizwa ngijabule kakhulu njengomuntu omusha osemphakathini okwazi ukuthi anikeze abantu ukudla okunempilo. Inkukhu uyakwazi ukuyikhulisa between ama-cycle amabili mo uyifama wena uyazikhethela ukuthi uyidayisa mase kungakanani. At 4 weeks uyakwazi ukuthi uyidayisele iy'tolo ezidayisa ukudla ko 1.8 kg ko 4 weeks, and then at 6 weeks uyila esuke isikhule khona ngokwanele ngokomthetho isingaka isiwulo size omkhulu go 6 weeks at 2.5 kg, sometimes 3, kuya ngokuthi wena uxoxa kangakanani ney'nkukhu zakho ezala ekhaya zingo 3 kg. Nginokuthembeka engisengikwakhile la phakathi kwami nomphakathi engiwusevisayo. Kakhulukazi ngoba futhi sengithi asizidayisa iy'nkukhu zodwa kanje, sidayisa namakhombo sokuthi kuhamba inkukhu, u-green pepper, ispinashi kuhlangene. Nama-tray-ke siba nama-tray, ama-gizzards, ama-livers, ama-inside, iy'nhliziyo, yonke leyo nto leyo kuba wo-R20 ama-tray. Iwona ahamba kakhulu-ke futhi-ke ama-tray because khona ikhombo nje yethi R100 ehamba kakhulu. Ama-livers awu-2, ama-gizzards awu-2, upelepele omncane nespinashi R100. Kudala abazali bethu babephila beze befika ko-100. Namhlanje lezo zinto azenzeki ngenxa yokudla esikudlayo nokuthi nathi asikho aware, like nje sitshela ukuthi sithe kodwa nje sithe ngenxa yokuthi asazi ukuthi sidlani, asazi ukuthi yini lesifaka emlomeni yethu, sijabulela ukuthi ukudla kumnandi, uyabo. Ngiqasha abantu abasemphakathini ngamasibomu deliberately ngenxa yokuthi uma ngikuqashile ngisivele uzokhuluma vele ngathi. And then aside from lokho sino social media active kakhulu, sitholakala yonke indawo, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, yonke indawo nje mongasearch uMadam Clark-Selote na Google Maps yabo sikhona.
Aliswa, you looked very impressed with Madame Clark. Your thoughts on what you just saw?
Firstly, growing up in a home deep in the Eastern Cape where we have our own live chickens at home and we also have our own garden where we grow our own vegetables as well, I was very impressed, quite commendable. And if she can provide the people with such nutritious food and organic meat at such a reasonable price of 100 rands, then why can't the government offer us the same? Because if then we can shift towards a more accessible and a more affordable nutritious and healthy foods, then I feel like our purchasing practices would change and we would be shaped to buying more nutritious food in that sense.
Lisa, she's using social media quite aggressively. Do you think it's a good thing?
Yes, I definitely think it's a good thing. I think that it's exciting to see young people using social media to promote healthy products. And I mean, if it can work for unhealthy products, then those same practices should be used for healthy products so that it can inform better dietary decisions.
Winnie, the dietitian from Limpopo?
I'm actually very impressed because we once had a conversation in class where we discussed whether healthy food is expensive or not. And she's actually a true definition of that. Healthy food is not expensive. It's not expensive as people think. And it's easy to have this healthy food by this subsistence farming. And the fact that she is providing this healthy food at a very, very reasonable price is an impressive thing because it will change the mindset of people towards this myth of healthy food is expensive.
Joan, that's obviously great to see Madame Klux, but it's a small minority because industry is aggressive. What do you think is needed?
I think when it comes to the specifically this kind of marketing to young people, what we need is official regulations from the government. At the moment, the industry is self-regulating, and it's just not working. You have to opt into being part of that marketing regulation board, and that's just not happening. They have no reason to really do that because the young people are such a big market and possible lifelong customer. So I think it's time for proper regulations on these companies.
There is proper regulation in the pipeline, Simpuya. As a policymaker, talk to us about R337.
Yes, so as being part of Fix My Food South Africa, we are currently writing a youth statement to the government on the R337 food regulation. We're asking them to first expedite the process of implementing that particular policy because that policy tackles the front of package labeling and what consumers buy, and it informs consumers of what exactly is in their food so that they know what exactly that they're putting in their body.
Young people want action. Winnie, final thoughts.
I can say it's really important for young people to know what we are really eating. This way, it will help us in having a healthy dietary choice, and it will later help in reducing the prevalence of obesity and non-communicable diseases we have. And this thing of having young people with non-communicable diseases will fade away.
Aliswa, you agree with Winnie?
I definitely agree. As a student that's trying to juggle academics, work on the side, and just life, I feel like we need clear, easy to understand labels which will accommodate everyone, even those who find it difficult to read a label, because I know and understand a label, yes, but I do not have the time to go through every single thing when I'm doing my grocery shopping. So I feel like having simple, visible and easy to understand labels will just make everything much more simpler and also shape us and cause a shift from the ultra processed to the more whole and nutritious foods as we would ideally desire. Yeah.
Simpiwe, as a young policymaker?
To steal or to borrow from the slogan used by the South African Youth Gender Action Plan, as young people, we want nutritious food that is sustainable, that's affordable, and that's widely accessible.
And you, Joseph?
Right. So there's this saying that says it takes a village to raise a child. And once people hold the government and big food companies accountable for their actions, it would be much better for people to actually get better information, like our colleagues mentioned, that will help them select food that is not just healthy for them, but as well as food that is healthy for the children. Because who essentially are we fighting for? We are fighting for the children who are targeted. These are innocent civilians that will eventually lead South Africa in the future. So what, like they say, you are what you eat, and what we want our young children to consume is healthy, nutritious food. This is a basic fundamental right for every single child.
Joan, as a journalist, is it possible?
I think I agree with the point about accountability. I think the food industry in South Africa has evaded just the most basic controls on their business, and I think that's what needs to stop to make a change.
Final thoughts, Lisa?
I agree with everything that my colleagues have said, but I also think it's important to promote healthy food. And if we can get that going along with regulations and policies, I think that would have a positive outcome.
And there you have it. Young people know and are aware that big food is taking advantage of them, and they want change right now. They want the government to protect them from big food's harmful practices and to support their access to healthier food options. Regulations enforced by law need to be put in place urgently to regulate the ultra-processed products advertised. There is currently a draft regulation, R337, which aims to put warning labels on ultra-processed products. In 2023, the public was invited to make submissions. Nearly a year later, we are waiting to hear the outcome. We don't want to wait another year. The regulations could stop companies from putting colorful cartoon characters and health claims on unhealthy food. Next time, we sit down with marketing and policy experts to unpack marketing strategies and the regulatory measures we have available to stop the industry from stalking our kids. Support the petition, which encourages government to implement the front-of-pack warning label regulation as soon as possible. The regulation includes restrictions on marketing to children. Find it on healer.org.